Mr. Speaker, the proposed amendments to the Accounting and Corporate Regulatory Act, or ACRA, of 2004, along with other related acts, are designed to improve registration procedures while making regulatory enhancements. I support the bill, but will flag some areas of concern. I will begin by discussing the two main thrusts of the bill pertaining to improving the business environment and enhancing corporate regulation. I will then move on to some more general reflections on the fundamental tensions between these two objectives. Since much of the bill pertains to the business climate, I will also state at the outset that I am an associate professor at a business school. So the amendments include several that are meant to improve the ease of business registration. Clause 8 empowers the registrar or authority to obtain information related to ascertaining the veracity of registration from certain specified sources, including governmental agencies. By a similar token, expanding the recognition of financial statements prepared according to internationally accepted standards as embodied in Clause 48 will make it easier for foreign investors to register the subsidiaries of their businesses locally. Further simplifying the procedures involved in setting up private enterprises, not least by making the different arms of the government talk to one another, will continue to lighten the burden of regulation. This in turn has the potential to spur further entrepreneurial activity, promote competition, stimulate the growth of existing businesses, and even potentially raise productivity. Of course, Singapore already does reasonably well by this standard. The most recent edition of the World Bank's Doing Business report ranked our nation second overall in terms of ease of doing business. Even so, the starting a business sub-indicator, the one that is most related to the bill at hand, had us at fourth, behind New Zealand, Georgia, and Canada. It is a reminder that other economies do not sit still, even as we strive to continue to improve our own. Hence, any steps that we can take to continue easing the process of new business formation should, in and of itself, be welcome. Moreover, the amendments also enforce certain rudimentary personal data protections, especially pertaining to residential addresses. For example, the new Section 30C and D affords the exclusion of residential addresses from public disclosure, so long as contact addresses are also available. Several clauses apply the same to related acts, such as Clause 14 for public accountants to list a distinct contact address for public inspection in the Accountants Act, or Clause 40 for directors, chief executives, or secretaries in the Companies Act. These basic protections are to be welcomed, not least because in an age of pervasive information dissemination where, as we all know, the internet never forgets, individuals and their families should at least be able to find some refuge from public scrutiny in their homes. Of course, this naturally begs the question of whether providing information that differs from official residency information may inhibit police or judicial operations. Certain clauses, such as clauses 19, 26, and 45, stipulate that documents may be directly served to contact addresses. I will note that Clause 26 specifically states that such documents may be sent either via ordinary or prepaid registered post, but notably, no such language is included in clauses 19, 34, 45, or 65, albeit the preamble definition of contact address, which indicates the necessity of a physical address at which the individual can be contacted by post, may be sufficient. Relatedly, it does strike me as somewhat odd that there is no requirement that registered post be used to ensure receipt. This is fairly common practice for at least initial attempts at personal service prior to any application for substituted service thereafter. So several clauses take steps to enhance the corporate regulatory landscape. Clause 39 allows the registrar to unilaterally amend the register of directors for a company with reasonable cause. But when paired with Clause 8, where information may be obtained from any authorized information service provider, which could, of course, entail non-governmental entities, problems could emerge, especially in a world where there may be incentives to generate fraudulent information, or even if, in the absence of malicious intent, such entities suffer from lapses that could corrupt their databases. To be fair, the proposed amendments to Section 30A, Part 4, relieves the person of liability if there is erroneous or inaccurate information collected, if they have not been offered an opportunity to verify said information. But it nonetheless raises questions about how much the government should be reliant on external information sources. Now, I'll be the first to acknowledge that restricting data providers to only intragovernmental sources may be even worse given capacity limitations in the public sector. But it nevertheless places a strong onus on the government to carefully verify the accuracy of information obtained. I trust that this will be emphasized to public officials as part of standard operating procedures as they would go about their due diligence processes. Furthermore, I hope that ACRA will clearly post information on their website that explains the appeal mechanisms that may be available to individuals who wish to contest a disqualification. So in introducing these two sets of amendments, the government is threading a fine needle of easing what could otherwise be tiresome or onerous processes involved in individuals pursuing private interests, while also ensuring that these private interests do not come into conflict with broader public and social objectives. In this sense, then, it's important to remember that we must guard against carrying any pro-business policy too far. We must understand that supporting business does not imply coddling them from exposure to competitive market forces, nor does it preclude taking care of other stakeholders, especially workers in our economy. For these reasons, sensible regulation must be necessary. Recent events surrounding the Doing Business report itself are instructive. The World Bank suspended the publication of the indicators in 2020. In part because of backlash about how the measures failed to adequately account for pro-social considerations and perceptions that there was widespread gaming of the system. Worse, the indicators were accused of favoring a right-leaning ideology. For instance, it included an indicator for paying taxes that seemed to suggest that lower corporate taxes were always unambiguously better. As the Workers' Party has argued on multiple occasions in this House before, a higher effective corporate tax rate, if directed appropriately, can yield many positive benefits, ranging from averting an increase in the GST to providing further relief to SMEs to reinvesting more in our homegrown companies. Another controversial indicator related to employing workers, where more robust labor regulations were treated crudely as a cost, thereby failing to take into account the offsetting benefits of stronger employment protections. The indicator was justifiably excluded from the compilation of the aggregate index since 2011, but its presence in the report was nevertheless viewed as symptomatic of the report's implicit biases. More generally, we should also not allow the world to think that an easy business environment also means a permissive one. Some have even suggested the term Singapore washing, the process where foreign actors take advantage of our relatively simple registration processes and global reputation for incorruptibility to incorporate fronts for dubious business activities in some form of a quid pro quo for investing in our city-state. Such a mindset will undermine our very hard-won brand name and eventually come back to bite us. Recent incidents have already raised questions on how indulgent we appear to be of illicit activities, especially with regard to financial flows. The sentences meted out for the 3 billion Fujian gang money laundering case of between 13 and 15 months jail time struck some as excessively lenient. In a written response to the Honourable Member, Mr. Leong Man Wai, Minister Shanmugam indicated that this duration is comparable to other jurisdictions, although he did concede that further tightening of regulatory measures was warranted. The decision to extradite the alleged malware purveyor, Wang Yunhe, to the United States without also prosecuting him for crimes here also raises the question of why our laws do not appear to be sufficient to ensnare such criminal operations. After all, US court documents reveal that the companies he registered here were shell companies used to, and I quote, conceal the identity and illegitimate nature of his proceeds, end quote. Now, I'm aware that we will be debating the anti-money laundering bill in this House next month, where these matters are very likely to be debated at length. Nevertheless, I hope that we will reflect on whether our drive towards simplifying doing business here may have ended up erring on the side of becoming too permissive, excuse me. In closing, I will urge this House to guard against allowing the undeniable benefits, of a favorable business climate to entrench itself as an ideology, divorced from the counterbalancing role of sound corporate regulation, and subsequently insulated from critique. Internal criticism of the Doing Business report contributed to the resignation of the then chief economist of the World Bank. As we debate the present bill in Parliament, it is my hope that we also remain clear-eyed on the value of considered, constructive criticism of our own business environment too.